All right, what's up, everybody? Today on the show, we are joined by Congressman Ro Khanna. Chief and I sit down with him for about 40 minutes. Obviously, as you guys know, we've covered the Epstein files and, the whole history of Jeffrey Epstein and whatnot. I think we probably have done it like 6 or 7 times by now. So we had the opportunity to interview Congressman Khanna. Like I said, he's been very vocal about the files and whatnot. So we just kind of wanted to pick his brain and get more into it. So that's today's episode. Hope you guys enjoy it. And have a great day. Before we get into today's show, I do want to talk about Roback. They have that azalea collection, Chief. It looks real nice.
I busted mine out for the Masters weekend.
You have to.
Yeah.
You have to. It's a tradition unlike any other. Now that they drop the new azalea collection every April for Master season, it's awesome.
They're gorgeous. They're a statement piece.
Yeah, serious firepower. They also got the collegiate collection. I love that. And finally, Roback dropped their first sports shirt and sweater polo, and I'm here for it if you're looking to freshen up the date night fits. These two are worth a shot. The sweater polo has a great stretchy fabric, and the sports shirt is the softest, most comfortable, nice, and casual shirt out there. Use code DOG on Roback.com for a generous 20% off for all new customers through the end of this week. That's spelled RHOBACK.com. That's 20% off all polos, hoodies, sports shirts, and more with code DOG. I have to say, every single time, that code will expire at the end of the week, which means pretty much tomorrow.
Move fast.
Yes, move fast. So one more time, go to Roback.com, enter code DOG, you get 20% off, and it's a no-brainer. Roback really does have the best stuff, so go check them out. Also, ChevyDriveChicago.com. They're starting the year off right, obviously. You guys know we're giving away a Chevy. And,
do people know that?
I hope so.
Giving away a Chevy.
We've been screaming it from the rooftops.
Yep.
It's one of the coolest promotions we've had the opportunity to do since we've been with Barstool here. And that's right. You can win a car, and you get to pick it, win it, drive it. So many great cars to pick from. In the Chevy lineup, there is one that is perfect for you and what you need. If you need a truck you can depend on, pick the Silverado. If you're ready to go EV, how about that Equinox EV? It's perfect for you. If you want an SUV, the Blazer or the Equinox is what you need. Entering is easy. Go to ChevyDriveChicago.com to enter to win. Seriously, it's all you do. You go to ChevyDriveChicago.com. There's like a little banner ad. Make sure you're at the right spot. You click it. You answer like 3, and it's just like informational answers, like just your name, your address, your email address, and so go do it. In the meantime, go shop your pick at your local Chevy dealer today. The official partner, of the Chicago Bears. Go check out Chevy. All right, back. Today is Thursday. It's April 16th. Welcome, everybody, to the Dog Walk presented by Barstool Sports. Today, we are joined on Zoom by Congressman Ro Khanna. Ro, thank you for doing this with Chief and I. We got to say, this isn't a 20-on-1 like the video we saw you posted a couple days ago. So welcome to the show. Thanks a lot for your time.
Appreciate it. I thought I held my own. Of course, the conservatives found the one conservative woman who was very eloquent, and they've been posting her clip everywhere. But I enjoyed mixing it up.
Yeah.
No, from what I saw, I thought you did well, and that's like an impossible thing. So hopefully it's a little bit different tone here today.
You guys can be tough. I'm not.
Oh, we're going to be tough. Yeah. Well, let's just start with the status update. Obviously, you and Thomas Massie have been leading the charge on the Epstein files and the release. At least from where I'm sitting, it feels like maybe after the Pam Bondi appearance, things have kind of slowed, and maybe it's just the news cycle is too crazy. But where are we now? What's the latest on the Epstein files and their release?
The most important news of the last couple of weeks was the First Lady when she said, quote, Epstein was not alone. And she basically contradicted Donald Trump, because Donald Trump was saying that all of these survivors who I've met and who were at the press conference, that they were all a hoax, that only Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell were involved in the crimes. And the First Lady is saying, no, actually, Massie and Khan have been right, that there are a lot of survivors who were raped or abused by other men, and that there need to be investigations and prosecutions. We've had 3 million files released. That's more than ever, but there's still 3 million files that need to be released. You know it's a bad when the British are asking the Americans to release the remaining files and comply with the law that Massie and I passed. So we're still fighting to get those files released.
What did you make of Melania coming out? There's been a lot of reports that Donald Trump didn't know that statement was coming, that she kind of went rogue. Is that a person who you would want to subpoena after seeing that statement?
Yes, and I do think she went rogue. I mean, she basically contradicted the president. The president said these people the survivors are a hoax, and she's saying no, they need to be listened to. She's saying that more than Epstein were involved, that there are other rich and powerful men who have not been prosecuted. But the biggest thing she needs to do is be out there telling the president and the attorney general to release the remaining files and to start prosecutions. You know, look, I condemned what happened, obviously, with Swalwell. It was disgusting behavior. But here's what I don't understand. 2 days later, law enforcement, DAs are saying we're going to investigate Swalwell. Fine, I've said law enforcement should investigate him. How in the world have the Epstein class not had investigations? How is it that there are serious allegations against people like Les Wexner and Leon Black and others who I'm not going to just mention by name, and there's no investigation? Like, how is that possible? And this is what's driving the survivors angry, and it's what's driving Americans angry, that there seems to be this group of rich and powerful people who are multi-billionaires or very wealthy, who contribute to politicians who've been above the law. I call it the Epstein class, and it's two tiers of justice.
So you said that there's an additional 3 million files that need to be released. What is the timeline for the full release of those files, and when do you expect another dump?
Well, they should have been released months ago. At this point, it's stonewalling. I mean, we've gotten drip by drip the 3 million files, but we need to make this the issue before we confirm any new attorney general. The Senate Democrats do, saying, let's get a commitment to release the other files. Otherwise, it's going to be a fight to get those other 3 million files. We may not get them until we have a new Democratic president, but Massey and I are going to fight to do that. But there are two basic fights at this point: getting those remaining files and then getting the prosecutions of the people in the files.
But I guess that's something I don't understand, because you guys fought, and it was basically a unanimous bill passed and signed to have these files released. And you, like you said, drip by drip. So if it is the law of the land to release those files, how can they stonewall without any sort of repercussions?
Well, the Trump administration hasn't exactly been ones to follow the law when it comes to a lot of things, especially right now, the war in Iran. But what they're saying is that they are redacting this information to protect the survivors. Here's why that argument doesn't hold water. The survivors themselves want more if it released. The survivors never have been consulted by the Department of Justice about these redactions. These redactions largely are protecting the men who raped and abused them. You can take away the survivors' names and you can still release the men who did it. Now, there's legal action that we can take. It would be most impactful if it comes from the survivors themselves, but the court process could take months to order. This is why Massey and I had gone to the Southern District of New York early and said, appoint a special master to review these files. Unfortunately, they found we didn't have standing in that case, but now we need to see if the survivors will bring the case.
What kind of tools do you have in your locker other than the survivors, like you and Massey and the rest of Congress? Can you hold people in contempt of Congress? Can you claim obstruction of justice with these? Like, what tools do you have in your locker to force the Justice Department's hand to either expedite this or just release them all at once? Because I can't imagine if you have an army of attorneys going through all the files looking for victims' names, that takes months. Like,
no, it doesn't. I mean, it's a pretext. I mean, they're not being honest. You're absolutely right. We need to have, I believe we need a select committee on the Epstein matter, co-chaired by Massey and me, bringing these people in front of the Congress, or have Robert Garcia do it when he becomes chair of the Oversight Committee, and have the Oversight Committee basically focus on Epstein. And I would bring in every single person it mentioned in the files who actually went to the island or the ranch. And I would bring in these Justice Department officials and FBI officials saying, are you going to obstruct justice, or are you going to get us the files, and be open to whistleblowers? So this is why taking back Congress is so important. If we get the committee chairs and Hakeem or whoever is, Hakeem is speaker, we can force Congress to subpoena these individuals and then hold them in contempt, civil or criminal contempt, if they don't comply.
Do you think that you would have support if you do take back the House and the Senate to actually go that route? Because, you know, the Republican side of things would be like, well, this was not exactly new information. Biden had an entire 4 years in his Justice Department to release files. So why would a Congress that has many of the same people that were in the Biden administration and had control now be trusted to do the right thing and release those files?
Well, 2 points. First, we have votes right now to at least get subpoenas. I mean, Nancy Mace and I have worked in a bipartisan way on the Oversight Committee, so we're already thinking of holding Pam Bondi in contempt if she doesn't reschedule. And this has been a pretty bipartisan coalition, including people like Lauren Boebert, Nancy Mace, and Marjorie Taylor Greene, who is no longer in Congress. The second thing is there's no excuse the Biden administration should have released the files. I mean, they say that there were still ongoing hearings, but they should have come to Congress. We needed a law that was passed. We didn't do that. But now that the law has been passed, the Democrats have shown that we passed the law, and we've been the ones fighting to uphold it. So under the Biden administration, there was never a law. Now there is a law. It's a law that Massey and I authored. It's technically a law that has my name on it. I don't think the president's realized he signed a Democrat's bill. And so there's no reason that a Democratic Congress won't be trusted to uphold a law that a Democrat wrote. And we will do whatever we can to subpoena, to hold in contempt, and by the way, to let people know that a new president's going to be there in 2029, and they probably don't want to be on the wrong side of that, because some of these crimes don't have a statute of limitations that run out by the time we get a new administration.
Do you have like a subpoena wish list of people that you'd like to bring in?
I do. I mean, look, I think that some of them are coming in already. Les Wexner, we subpoenaed, Bill Gates. Anyone who went to the island or ranch needs to be subpoenaed and come in. And that includes Democrats, it includes Republicans. All of them need to come in. Of course, Bondi needs to come in. Todd Blanche, who's the acting attorney general, needs to come in. But then I would ask them, who are the actual people doing the redactions, and start to subpoena about a dozen people from the Justice Department, including career folks, to understand why these files have not been released, what the redaction process is, how do we protect survivors but get the rest of the files out. So where the difference is that Comer is okay with subpoenaing some of the people in the Epstein files, but I want to be subpoenaing people at the Justice Department with two questions. Why were we not getting the rest of the files out, and why is there no single investigation? Right, when you have the U.S. attorney in Washington, D.C. Saying, contact me and I want to open up an investigation against Swalwell. Okay, why are you not doing this with the dozens of other people already in the Epstein files who have very serious allegations of abuse, rape, and trafficking? I want to emphasize this point. There has not been a single investigation or prosecution, even of the 3 million files that have been released, even when you have survivors saying the people who raped me are in those files that are already public, even when you have Britain and Norway and France and every other major country taking this seriously and prosecuting, America is the only place where we're not having prosecutions or investigations.
What about a guy like Alex Acosta, where he supposedly said in an interview that when he brought the charges against Epstein originally in the 2000s, that he was intelligence. So it went from having, I think, 58 or 60 charges down to 2, and it was a slap on the wrist. Has there been questioning of him? It would be like, what do you mean? Where did you hear that? How did you go from having 58 charges, or excuse me if I don't have that number accurately, to down to 2? So what happened with that, and has he been questioned?
He has been questioned, and he was very evasive, and it was not forthcoming. And the reason is what we need is the prosecution memos that contradicted his judgment, that actually showed that there needed to be more counts, that showed that there needed to be more co-conspirators. That information we specifically asked for in our law, and we still haven't gotten it. The Justice Department is withholding it, citing privilege, citing that it's privileged communication between lawyers. But our law says that the release needs to trump privilege. And that's another place where they're violating the law. So more than Acosta, we need the memos that contradict his judgment.
Do you think, fast forwarding past midterms, if you do get the House and the Senate, that this is to a level where there could be impeachment if he is breaking, if Donald Trump or other officials are openly breaking this law. Would you have enough power to go that route?
Well, I believe Trump needs to be impeached for multiple reasons. First, he's threatening to wipe out Iranian civilization. That is a threat of genocide that's a violation of international law. Second, his family is engaged in corruption with cryptocurrency and basically doling out pardons to enrich himself. Third, there's been a cover-up of the Epstein matter. But you could have a list of grievances on Donald Trump. I believe fundamentally that he needs to be held accountable. The thing that has done worst, in my view, is get us into a war with no congressional authorization and threatening human rights violations.
I do want to get to Iran. I feel like we should stick on this a little bit.
Do you foresee that Trump will kind of change course here based off Melania's statement, or do you think he's kind of too in deep with his original position?
You know, I hope he changes, because ultimately for me, this has always been about the survivors. And if you look at some of the early press conferences, we actually were asking Donald Trump to meet with the survivors. That's what they wanted. When Marjorie Taylor Greene joined me and Massey, she thought that Trump would be on her side. She thought Trump would meet the survivors, would push for the release. And for me, this has always been about survivors. It's very personal. I've seen survivors break down in tears. I've had survivors texting me furious that the person they know who raped them is in these files and nothing's being done. So I hope he changes course. I hope he and the First Lady meet with the survivors. I hope that they actually push for the release of the remaining files, and I hope that they tell the Attorney General to prosecute these people who did heinous things. Do I have that confidence? No, because he's stonewalled every time. And the question is, what is he trying to hide?
Well, what do you think he is trying to hide? I heard you say somewhere else that he's not, that you haven't personally seen his name as a perpetrator in the files. Is that still accurate? And then what do you think the motivation is for hiding it if he himself is not personally liable?
Well, one, it's embarrassment, right? I mean, there is this case of a person who accused him of raping her when she was 13 in the early 1980s. We don't know if it's legitimate, but the DOJ held those witness interviews, and then they only released them when journalists found out that they had withheld them. So there may be information that is embarrassing to him. There may be information, some survivors have suggested, about Mar-a-Lago's involvement in all of this, and how much of the trafficking and abuse took place at Mar-a-Lago. And of course, his wife is involved in her relationship with Epstein. Now, she claims that Epstein did not introduce her to Donald Trump, but there's probably much more details in terms of the family's relationship with Epstein that he does not want to come out. I mean, he's obviously protecting something. And then there are powerful people that are contributors to Republicans, and there are powerful world leaders involved. And the point of the relationship with intelligence agencies, and I don't want to speculate and be conspiratorial, but there's certainly unanswered questions about that.
Well, it's hard not to be conspiratorial about this because going all the way back, like we talked about Acosta, where you had the supposed quote about, Epstein being intelligence, and you have Ghislaine Maxwell and her father. Her father's given basically a state funeral in Israel. And then it's just like even a situation where, journalist Amy Robach was caught on a hot mic saying that they killed her Epstein story. We had him in 2015 and she was told not to run it. And it's like, how deep does this go? Is the media involved? It's like, how do you get to the root cause of this problem? And are there directives coming from somewhere that we can't easily see that's not just the Trump administration? Because this has been going on for decades, well before he was in power.
I do believe that there is a group of people who are wealthy donors to both parties who have been operating above the law. That's what I call the Epstein class. Those are people in the United States who've had too much power and are defying it. In terms of the intelligence agencies, I would say that there are a lot of unanswered questions. We need to know, what was Epstein's relationship with the Mossad? What was his relationship with the CIA? Why did he have access to so many world leaders? Why was he facilitating these meetings? My law, Massey's law, doesn't allow for some of that information to come out because our law does not cover classified information. We would never have gotten that through Congress because you can't force the release of classified information. But I believe the next president needs to declassify elements of that and have a commission to understand exactly what Epstein's relationship was with intelligence agencies. Julie Brown, who's done incredible reporting from the Miami Herald, has said that there are very legitimate questions about that.
Do you think that this is a broader question? Given, the country, and I'm guilty of this, it's rampant with conspiracy theories now. Do you think that, and it's like some of these things, where you go back to 9/11, the Iraq invasion, Epstein, COVID, do you think that there needs to be another church committee style like they had in the 70s that uncovered? Yes. Okay, so who can bring that to the floor to get that level of investigation into the intelligence community?
That's a great suggestion, actually. I mean, that's something maybe I'll talk to Hakeem and leadership about, that we should be pushing for not just the investigation of people in terms of these files and the perpetrators, but also having a church-like committee from the House, and it should be in the Senate as well, that looks at the intelligence and offers a report on what we knew about Epstein and what needs to be done. Because that kind of committee would have access to the intelligence in a way that we can't force the public release of.
Ro, if you had the opportunity to sit down and talk to one person to ask them questions about Jeffrey Epstein and they gave you honest answers, who would it be and why, outside of Donald Trump, Ghislaine Maxwell, or Les Wexner?
In terms of who would give me honest answers, I would...
or you could give them a truth serum.
Yes.
So,
I would probably talk to the director of the CIA, and I'd want to know what we know about his connections to intelligence, what we know about his connections to foreign leaders, why there were illegal payments to him, where that money was coming from, what his motives were, whether he took his own life or not. I would talk to both the head of the CIA and actually, the head of the FBI, but you're not going to, if you give him a truth serum. Kash Patel, I don't trust. But that's where a lot of that information, I think, is of who this guy actually was.
I don't know what to make of this Kash Patel. It feels like, again, not a lawyer, just a podcast guy, but it's like his testimony felt like such a disaster. And also with some of his interviews where he's like, there are no files. We don't have anything linking him to other people. And then you see a redaction that the FBI had listed Wexner as a co-conspirator.
Yeah.
So do you think that anyone, Patel included, has done anything that would be considered perjury?
He lied. Whether I'd have to go parse the words, but I don't understand how he can say, or Pam Bondi can say, that there are no new files, or that no one has committed a prosecutable crime, and then you have things like Les Wexner and Leo Black and 3 million files. So, I don't know what his exact statement was, and perjury is a high bar in proving, but if you're saying very simply, did he lie to the American people? Yes, he did.
Have you gotten pressure from people within your party for going so hard after this issue? What's that been like from that angle?
Well, in the beginning, they weren't enthusiastic. They thought, oh, Ro, this is just kind of conspiratorial, and why are you going down this road? And you're the serious guy on the economy and AI. And I said, no, you can't restore people's trust if they think that there's a group of people who have raped young girls and have no consequence. But then as they saw that I was gaining traction, then we got the party behind us. Of course, I've upset a lot of people in the Epstein class. There are people in my own district who are funding an opponent against me, partly because I support a billionaire tax, partly because I've been so vocal on calling out this Epstein class. And there are billionaires funding an opponent against Massey. So it's not easy to take on people of power. I've got people online saying, oh, we're going to vet everything about you and go after you. You make enemies. And I have, and Massey have made some very powerful enemies.
Is there a nuclear option for this where you just have the victims testify before Congress and name names? So the people that are calling you, they're irate. Hey, that person that raped me is in the files. Is that an option?
It is, but I think that the survivors will not do that unless they really know someone would take action. So maybe they do that if we have a new attorney general committed to it or a new administration. But it's asking a lot of survivors to go do that just for the curiosity of the American people if they don't think that it's going to actually lead to prosecutions. Why did we force this open? Not so you and I can talk about it or ordinary Americans can talk about it, so that survivors could get justice, so that by forcing this open, we could actually get prosecutions, investigations, and convictions. And if that's not happening, the survivors are not going to want to do that.
You're still, I would say, relatively new to Congress. When did you come in? 2017, 19?
Yeah, 17.
Okay, so almost 10 years. What has been your overall impression of how Washington works? And is there something that you learned in the last 10 years that you're just disappointed by?
Too much money in politics. I mean, the corruption is something we need to tackle, and the fundamental corruption is big money in politics. Whether it's big money for defense contractors, big money for big pharma, big money for billionaires who start these super PACs, big money for people who don't want AI regulations, big money for people who don't want transparency on Epstein or prosecutions. Too much money in politics. And if I could do one thing, I would say have a amendment that gets money out of politics, that says money is not political speech, that we're not going to have private money flooding public elections. And that if you can't get that through 2/3 of Congress, which is what it requires for an amendment, then call a constitutional convention. Have 2/3 of the states put forth the amendment, which you can do under Article 5, and pass that amendment. But at least start that conversation. Like the next president should start a conversation around this country about getting money out of politics.
Hey, let's take a quick break because I want to talk about a movie that drops tomorrow, probably tonight, actually. I love you got the little late night screening. So from the creator of John Wick and Nobody comes the movie Normal, a double-barreled shotgun blast of pure mayhem for Sheriff Ulysses, played by Bob Odenkirk. A new job as temporary sheriff in the quaint town of Normal, Minnesota was meant to be a welcome respite from recent troubles. But when a botched bank robbery interrupts the peace at a dark secret is exposed, and Ulysses discovers that the town of Normal is anything but. Directed by Ben Wheatley and starring Bob Odenkirk, Henry Winkler, and Lena Headey. Go check it out in theaters starting April 17th. Like I said, you could probably check it out tonight. I always like to sneak in a little early one. Get there a day early. You feel like you know so much more than people
like me.
Yeah, exactly. Because you're ahead of the game. So go check out Normal. It's going to be a good one. And I also want to tell you guys about Ball Knowers. It's a new game brought to you by Barstool Sports. It's a party game. It's 200 of the greatest sports debate topics. It's available in Walmarts everywhere. Chaos in a box, really. You pull cards and you pick sides arguing legendary sports debate topics. No stats, no Googling, no safety.
Put your phones away.
Yes, exactly. So go do it. Embrace debate. Shop now at walmart.com or in stores near you.
So how do you do that when it was a Supreme Court case that ruled that it was speech? So
you do it two ways. One, you get an amendment to overturn it, and if you can't get it through 2/3 of Congress, you call a constitutional convention of the states, and you get 2/3 of the states to have a legislature propose an amendment that says money is not speech, that private money shouldn't have any part of government elections, and you start a national conversation about that if you have this kind of convention. But even under Citizens United, you can restrict the amount of money to super PACs. Like Elon Musk can only give $7,000 to Donald Trump if Donald Trump's campaign, but he can go in the other room and write $300 million to a super PAC. Why? Why can't you have the same restrictions on super PACs that you have on contributions to candidates, even under Citizens United? And Summerlee and I have a bill to do exactly that. It hasn't gotten as much attention, but it basically says, okay, you can't give more than $7,000 to a super PAC. So Elon, you want to do a super PAC? Fine, but you can't give the super PAC more money than you can give Donald Trump or Vance directly. And that bill, I believe, would be constitutional under Citizens United.
How likely do you think it is that either that bill or the other route gets enacted, that you can actually make this happen?
Depends how much mobilization of the citizenry we have around it, right? The first Civil Rights Act was introduced in 1950, and it didn't pass until 1964. And so the question is, are we going to make this a priority, or is it just lip service? I mean, it's a check the box in every politician's speech. I want to overturn Citizens United. I want money out of politics. But what we need is a social movement and a president and a Senate leader and a House leader who said, this is what we're going to fight for. Just like the abolitionists fought against slavery or the anti-segregationists fought against Jim Crow. I believe one of the biggest challenges of our time is the corruption of our political process by a billionaire and donor class. Well, otherwise, how do you explain why we don't have a tax on billionaires? How do you explain why we don't have Medicare for all and healthcare as a human right? How do you explain why our defense budget is over 56% of our entire federal budget, and now they're proposing to increase it by $400 billion? How do you explain why we keep getting into these wars even though Americans don't want it? How do you explain why people can get away raping young girls and have nothing happen to them? It's because there is too much power that the wealthy have on the grips of America's political process.
Is there if you could say there's one thing that you think needs to be changed in the Democratic Party, what would it be?
There's more than one thing. We can't be the status quo party. Anyone who's been part of the status quo shouldn't be part of leading this party in the future. We need to be a party with a bold new moral direction. That means we need to be clear that there was genocide in Gaza. That means we need to be clear that we shouldn't be giving $1 more aid to Israel. That means we need to be clear that there shouldn't be a fuel blockade on Cuba. That means we need to be clear that the war in Iran is not just wrong strategically, it's morally wrong. That means we need to be clear that we're not going to be for bloated defense budgets, and that instead of spending billions of dollars on these wars, we're going to actually have Medicare for all and childcare at $10 a day and free public college and free trade schools and a living wage. And we're going to have an industrial bank to have a new industry in America. The problem is a lot of politicians say, yeah, we're not a status quo anymore. We're for change, but where are the policies? Where's the substance? People aren't fools, especially younger folks. They aren't going to just hear you mouth, okay, now we need to be a working class party. What does that mean? Are you actually going to say that Biden's policies on Gaza were a disaster? Are you actually going to say that we're going to stop giving aid to Israel? Are you actually going to say that it was morally wrong to get into these wars? Are you actually going to be for cutting defense? Are you actually going to stand for Medicare for all? Are you actually going to be for taxing billionaires? And so I want a new Democratic Party, but I want a Democratic Party that actually stands for something. Yeah. You know what the problem is? Like, Donald Trump's fighting for his moral vision, and we don't have enough conviction and morality and a clear vision in our party.
Donald Trump's moral vision.
Amoral vision.
Yeah. But back to the campaign, the money in politics. I look at that and I watch, I'm watching the news or I'm watching sports, and especially during election season, it's like you get a pharmaceutical ad followed by a political ad. Do you feel like that is almost like there might be just so much revenue coming through to the main media outlets that are from these PACs, that it's like they're going to temper the coverage on a bill like the one that you've introduced to get money out of politics, because I don't know how much money they're making from that, but they're getting a lot of ad revenue from politicians and from super PACs. So how do you get the people on your side, which I think most people would probably agree with you that there's too much money in politics, if you can't get the message out because you have these giant media companies who directly benefit from super PACs?
You've got to go build a social movement the way Bernie did, the way Zoran did. You got to go on independent media. You got to go on Sean Ryan and you guys and Joe Rogan and Flagrant and Young Turks and Breaking Points. I mean, the great thing is that the independent media has grown in an enormous way. Social media has grown in an enormous way. One can build a social movement, but it's going to take a massive social movement in this country around getting money out of politics. That it's not going to be enough for just getting elected to Congress or just getting elected to president. All that'll happen then if you don't have a social movement is the president will give a State of the Union speech. Let's get money out of politics. Let's overturn Citizens United. Half the Congress will get up and clap. Nothing will happen. there's no change. I mean, we've seen that before. What you really need is a social movement. I believe have a constitutional convention, really get people energized around it to take back their democracy. Because right now you've got entrenched interests that have really prevented the people from having basic health care, child care, and led to the greatest wealth inequality we've seen since the Gilded Age. 19 billionaires in this country have $3.5 trillion, which means that they have 12.5% of our entire economy, 19 billionaires. It's 3 times the concentration that Morgan, Rockefeller, Carnegie, Vanderbilt had during the Gilded Age.
Yeah. It feels like one of the ways the uber wealthy get around having to pay significant taxes is because they just take out loans against their shares. And it feels like that is a giant loophole where it's like, I don't actually have any income. I bought that yacht or whatever on a loan. So how do you tax people if it's all just tied up if you do this billionaire's tax, where if it's all tied up in stocks and investments, and then their income comes from loans, effectively?
Well, that's exactly why you need the billionaire tax. You say you tax them 5% on their actual wealth, on their total assets. Now, if you're worth 20 billion and you got to be worth 19 billion, fine. You're still going to have your yachts and your luxury houses and everything, but we can then fund healthcare for everyone, childcare for everyone. We could give a $3,000 check to every working family under 150,000. That's what Bernie and I have proposed, which is a tax on these billionaires on their total net worth, so that we can have healthcare, so that we can have childcare. But it's upset a lot of people. I mean, you've got billionaires. If you go on X, you got billionaires who are funding my opponent because of this, even though I have more billionaires than anyone in the country, in my district and surrounding areas. And I don't begrudge them their wealth. Great, you built great companies, but you did that on a foundation of taking people's data, of offshoring jobs, of automation. And if America's been good to you, you need to do good for America. It's patriotic, and we need that social contract.
Last thing from me on Epstein. You've seen the files. You've talked to the victims. In your estimation, what was the Epstein operation? Because it's like his money came from nowhere. He has links to intelligence. What do you think the purpose of that was? And how would you summarize the totality of it in terms of why he was such a powerful person?
He was a collector of other powerful people who built a network. He was a sick man, and he was allowing other people in powerful positions to meet each other. He was allowing some to have personal gratification by treating young women and young girls as dispensable. And he had built a network of people who wanted to be more part of his network than cared about these girls and women, and were fine with a culture of them being basically second-class citizens. Now, whether it was a honeypot operation or something like that, I don't know. And I have been careful not to speculate because Massey and I have been so involved. I don't want to undermine the credibility. So I always speak just based on facts. But what I can tell you is he had built a network of people that were so powerful that even only the President of the United States would have that kind of network. And people were more concerned about being part of his network than standing up for these young girls.
What's it been like for you to work so closely in a Republican like Massey? And do you feel like that's the kind of bonds that we kind of need here to get rid of some of this apathy towards people like you that are in political positions?
Well, it's been rewarding, and it's the only thing that actually got something done, right? I would say in the last 10 years, what else have we done with Trump voters where we've actually passed something? And the reason we were able to do it is because Massey and I had built a friendship in standing up against wars. He had lost his first wife. I know him personally. I know when he was trying to get over that. I know how much grief he went through. It's something that for years we understand the system as well. You've got to change the system. You've got to understand the system. But some people are like, "Oh, Ro, you're a progressive. You're on the left." I said, "I've spent the last year working with a conservative, with Thomas Massey, to get something done. It's not what side of the spectrum you're on. It's are you for people, and are you going to be taking on rich and powerful interests?" I fundamentally think we have to shake things up in this country. We're tired of the kind of incrementalism, status quo, centrist in the traditional sense of preserving the system, tinkering with the system. And what people want is transformative change and to reach in unusual alliances with people across the aisle.
Massey's a guy who I think he's famous for having the debt clock, or
yeah, he does.
The running
he
ticker.
Built it himself.
Yeah, right. Is that something you're concerned about as well? Is that another
yes.
issue? Yeah.
Yeah, of course. I mean, how can you not be concerned about the federal debt that is at 35 or so trillion? But because it will increase eventually interest rates, make it harder to buy a house, potentially cause inflation. So the question is, what's the cause of that debt? And I would argue the biggest cause of the debt is billionaire tax breaks and overseas wars. So if you reverse that, you could lower the deficit and you could invest in the healthcare and childcare and education of our people.
Do you think it feels like, at least publicly, Doge was a disaster, at least from a public relations standpoint. But when you talk about that debt, do you think that other than defense and taxing billionaires, do you need to go through the Pentagon and all these other agencies with like a fine-tooth comb and have sort of like line item crossouts to get things in order? Like, how dire is this issue? Can you fix it with just taxing billionaires?
No, you need to have, of course, cuts in the bloated defense budget. Doesn't mean you hurt our troops or our national security. You're just getting people fleecing the American people because they're charging 1,000% more than they should be charging. And the Pentagon, as you know, has failed 7 audits. So, and it's the largest discretionary item. So you do that, you do taxes, but you also look at Medicare Advantage fraud. You look at the fossil fuel subsidies. You look at duplicative agencies. The problem is Elon wasn't serious. I mean, he went and he cut USAID. That's less than 1% of the federal budget. Now, I mean, it's insignificant in terms of the budgetary cost, but it killed a lot of people. People died in Africa. So he was doing it to make a political statement. He wasn't looking at the big ticket items. In fact, initially I said, Elon, why don't you look at defense? You disrupted with SpaceX the Lockheed Boeing monopoly, and you did lower costs for satellite launches. Why not look at defense? But he wasn't willing to take on the sacred cows in Washington. That every time I'm on the Armed Services Committee 10 years, every time I'm the lone vote against the defense budget, 67-1 on the Armed Services. And all my colleagues are like, Khanna at the end. And then they go, boo, when I vote no. So you have a lot you have to overcome in this town to really get the deficit under control and to get the wasteful spending under control.
How many people, because it feels like you're right, there's so much money in politics that there's been that term like you have a party of incumbents, like the names change, but there is a status quo and you bicker over kind of social issues, but everything kind of flows the same. Do you think that there's enough people like Massey and people on your side where it's just like you do form a sort of coalition? Are there enough honest people who would be willing to engage with you and Massey to really fix some of these core kind of spending problems, defense problems? And like Congress has had an approval rating, I think, in the teens and 20s for my entire life. So is there a way that, you guys can be like, we've come together on this Epstein issue. How much bigger can we make the coalition besides just, you two and Nancy Mace and a few others? Like, how is there a growing movement, do you feel, in Congress with this newer generation to really reassert Congress's popularity and power?
It's possible. I mean, we can do it on a coalition that is against the Epstein class, against war, and for working class, for taxing some of these billionaires, for providing health care to Americans who don't have health care. I believe you can build an FDR majority on Team America. We're for getting money out of politics. We're for cleaning up the system. We're for dealing with people who have been shafted by a corrupt rigged system. But we've got to have a new generation, in my view, on both the left and the right. And we need a kind of progressive populism. I do believe that the country would respond to a progressive populism that was Team America, for people here, not for these foreign wars and getting money out of politics.
Is there someone that you think could lead a ticket that stands on those values? If you're
Well,
looking,
we'll see.
What we'll see. President Khanna.
We'll see what the most common meme is Massey Khanna or something. But
Yeah.
I think Massey's got to go win his race. I got to win my race. I mean, politics. Here's what I will say: that whoever should lead this country going forward probably shouldn't have been involved in the previous administrations. And I just, not because I don't have a lot of respect for people, I just think we need a new generation and a new approach. And it can't be the same kind of Clintonian 90s politics. We've got to get a bold, progressive, populist movement in this country. And it's got to be one that is getting money out of politics, really committed to doing it, for national health care, for taxing these billionaires, not getting in these wars, taking on the Epstein class. I'll say this, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I believe that the agenda that I'm articulating is the right agenda for the American people. So if it's not me, I hope someone steals it and figures out how to run on this agenda and build the coalition that we need to build.
Let's say that you and Massey lose your elections and your primaries.
Yeah.
Are you concerned that this whole Epstein thing kind of dies with you guys if you don't win your races?
No, I mean, Charles de Gaulle once said that the graveyard is filled with men who thought themselves indispensable. So I'm certainly not arrogant enough to think that either Massey or I are politically, indispensable. But I would say it would be a terrible message that if you raise your hand and you poke power in the eye, that they'll take you out. And that would be, people would get more risk averse in this town.
Ro, thank you very much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Appreciate you guys.
All right. That's it, everyone. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. That's it for today. That's it for this week. We will see you guys on Tuesday.